So hello everyone, I'm happy to have you here and excited to be here and address this distinguished audience. If you're looking to gain deeper understanding of your cybersecurity posture and acquisitions of your current portfolio companies, then this is your place. There are not so many talks about cybersecurity M&A, and I hope that there will be something new for you. I personally love this topic since I'm doing it with my team now because of the very high stakes. We have limited time and limited reliability of the information. Often you need to figure it in a very creative way. So this is true for the M&A Cybersecurity as well. Let's see, you can join on menti.com. You see the code on the upper side of the screen, and you can ask questions that will be answered later today. My name is Zsolt Fabian. Let me tell you a bit about myself. I'm currently a group cybersecurity lead for M&A, and I've dedicated my career over 25 years to this industry. So it has taken me through a number of sectors, including financial services, telecommunications, media, technology, and energy. And over the years, I've gained a comprehensive set of skills on the full spectrum of cybersecurity. From vulnerability research to incident response, red teaming, and forensic investigations, I also had the unfortunate privilege of investigating multiple global cases where the acquired organization was compromised. So today I'm here to share this knowledge with you. My goal is to equip with you all the insights and tools that will help you navigate this process successfully. So let's take a look at our agenda and understand who is in the room with us. Our agenda today includes this, and now let's talk about the audience. The session is designed to bridge the gap between the business and technology. We have a diverse group here today, security officers who are responsible for everything security related, from product, corporate security facing off with customers and regulators. They have to ensure the security of the M&A processes, meet the requirements, solve the problems and challenges, whatever they may be. Welcome security teams and technology teams, IT teams who are often in the front lines when it comes to security, legal, risk and deal teams, also others from business. Each of you play an important role in the M&A process. And together we can ensure that this tour is going to be not only successful, but secure. So before we dive into the specifics of cybersecurity and M&A, mergers and acquisitions are a significant aspect of the business world. M&A is a big business, trillions of dollars worth of deals being done. And this is a big risk at every deal, no matter how promising, inherently carries a degree of risk. So let's starting by introducing some key concepts. Mergers and acquisitions is a general term to describe the unification of companies through various types of financial transactions. These include mergers, acquisitions, consolidations, and others. In essence, it is an event that brings change to the structure, the operations, and sometimes the identity of a company. While the terms merger and acquisition are often used interchangeably, they have different meanings. An acquisition happens when one company takes over another and the acquired company ceases to exist, absorbed by the other business. A merger describes a scenario where two companies of roughly the same size come together to form a new entity. However, there are different types of these transactions, as we will see. Now let's see a few examples before we going into like the reasons, the types of forms, and other essential concepts of it. So this can happen for a variety of strategic reasons. The idea here is to combined value and performance of two companies will be greater than the sum of its separate individual parts. By merging, the companies can reduce cost, increase revenues, the leverage the other company's capabilities without risking the time and the involvement in developing these capabilities internally. So it can be a faster way to achieve higher revenues and market presence. By acquiring another company that has the latest technical capabilities, a business can grow and can increase its market share. For companies in cyclical industries, diversification can be a strategy to diversify cash flows and mitigate risks. So let's quickly see into various types. The horizontal mergers occur between companies in the same industry. They may or may not be direct competitors. For instance, two technology companies that develop the similar product in software solutions might merge. Vertical mergers involve companies along the same supply chain. For example, an ice cream manufacturer merging with a company that produces ice cream cones. Congeneric mergers happen between companies that serve the same customers in different ways. A television manufacturer might be merging with a cable service provider, while their services are complementary. they can improve customer experience. Market extensions involve two companies that sell the similar products in different markets. For example, a European coffee company is merging a similar company in Asia. This helps to expand the market reach and tap into new customer bases. Conglomerate mergers are typically for diversification purposes and between companies in unrelated industries, like a food processing company is merging with a tech firm. This helps them to diversify, stabilize cash flows by entering completely different markets. Understanding the forms is important as they affect the cybersecurity considerations. There are two particular forms of acquisitions. In a stock purchase, the acquirer pays the target company's shareholders directly. The compensation, which could be in the form of cash, stock, or other securities, goes directly to the shareholders. In an asset purchase, the acquirer purchases the company's assets directly. This can include infrastructure, intellectual property, contractor bases, real estate, brand names, etc. And this allows the acquirer to be selective about which assets they would like to take on. Once the acquisition completed, the next step is the integration process. There are several forms of this. The territorial integration is a form of integration when the acquirer company is significantly larger than the target. The acquirer takes over the target assets and liabilities, and the target company ceases to exist. A company becomes a subsidiary in the other case of the acquirer, but continues to operate its own business independently. The target company maintains its brand, operations, and identity while benefiting from the resources and support of the parent. It is a very common approach. And finally, the consolidation is when both companies cease to exist as separate entities and a new entity is formed. The new entity shall combine their strengths. There are other important terms that you should know. A divestiture is when a company is selling off parts of its business. It can be for a strategic move like eliminating underperforming units. For example, a tech company might sell its hardware division to concentrate on its software services. In a joint venture, two parties or more agree to pool their resources to achieve a specific business goal or do specific business activities. The joint venture operates as its own entity, separate from the participants' other businesses. For example, if two automotive companies form a joint venture to develop electric vehicle technology. A carve-out involves creating a new business entity from the part of the parent company. This can be used to allow the new entity or a spin-off to operate independently and focus on its specific market niche. One of the most important things to remember here is that there are no two deals are the same. These diverse types of deals illustrate why M&A can be quite challenging and complex, because each deal has its own circumstances, challenges, drivers by strategic goals and market conditions. Where two companies come together to form a new entity, when a small player is acquired to gain access to specific technologies, market segments to provide growth opportunities, when the acquirer bypass, in a case of a hostile takeover, the target's management to make a direct offer to its shareholders, which can be particularly challenging to us. And in other cases, the primary goal of an acquisition is to obtain valuable intellectual property, technology, or assets. So understanding what's driving the deal is important. The concepts I discussed here come to play in various combinations, but even these are just very simplistic categorizations. While every M&A deal is unique, they generally follow the same basic process, so understanding this process is important for us. So here is the high-level overview. At an initial deal making, we are searching and screening potential M&A targets. From the security perspective, this is where we start evaluating potential threats from the prospectus. At due diligence phase, both parties are investigating each other's businesses. For cybersecurity, this means investigating the target systems, processes to uncover vulnerabilities, potential breaches, compliance issues. An effective due diligence can prevent you costly surprises down the road. With pre-integration, planning is happening between the deal is being agreed upon and its legal closure. From an IT and security point of view, we prepare our plans and budgets, and once the deal is closed and all shares, assets have been transferred to the new owners, the integration phase begins. This is where the real work happens. So while finance, tax, and legal teams are involved in a compressed timeline early in the process, IT and security teams will face a long-term effort to ensure that the new combined entity operates securely and efficiently. Mergers and acquisitions are inherently risky, as I told, with a very high failure rate. This is ranging from 50 to 70% if you look at any statistics. To illustrate this, here are some of the most significant M&A due diligence disasters in history. These are not particularly related to cybersecurity in any way, but we are going to see some examples soon. These are primarily due to the inadequate due diligence processes. As we have seen, the inadequate due diligence can lead to disastrous outcomes for M&A transactions, and here are some lessons that learned in a very expensive way. To conduct a thorough due diligence before engaging in any major business transaction or investment is important. Recently we had a case where the acquirer purchased a target company that was faking millions of customer profiles. In another instance, a supposedly scalable cloud system couldn't handle the intended traffic, leading to significant delays in implementing the strategic vision. It is often overlooked to assess the strategic fit and cultural compatibility between companies. Cultural mismatches can lead to the demise of the deal. Legal and compliance issues must be evaluated to avoid costly legal battles. While the M&A fees are high, the cost of no or poor legal guidance can be even higher. Also, the competence and the integrity of the target company's management is important. The culture starts from the top, and there have been many cases when the integrity of the executives came into question. Issues such as tax fraud, legal troubles, even jail sentences can impact the success of the deal. Open source intelligence can be a valuable tool in researching and understanding the background and reputation of a company and its executives. And uncovering hidden risks and undisclosed information is easier said to be done. It is important to ask all the questions that you have and to dig deep into the target company's operations and of course financials. Avoiding a question on the other end or receiving vague answers can be an answer but also a red flag. Let's take a look at a notable example of a due diligence failure in cyber in the case of Marriott's acquisition of Starwood Hotels. This incident highlights the consequences of neglecting security. In 2016, Marriott acquired Starwood Hotels for $13.3 billion. However, in September of 2018, Marriott received an alert from an internal security tool regarding an attempt to access the Starwood West reservation database. Following the investigation, it was discovered that access to Starwood network was dating back to 2014, 2 years before the acquisition. This breach exposed 300 million West records, including personal information. The cost of the breach was very high, reportedly exceeding $70 million, but the following public release of the breach, Marriott's stock dropped by 5%, and the company faced damages from 2 class action lawsuits and about $100 million of fines on top of that. Another significant example is the breach of Telstra's newly acquired Asian subsidiary PacNet. In 2015, Telstra discovered that a hacker had accessed their networks of PacNet, and the breach occurred early in April using a SQL injection. They used it to deploy malware to their network. And the breach took place 2 weeks before Telstra closed this almost $700 million deal. However, Telstra was not informed about the breach before the deal was completed. One other great example is Verizon's acquisitions of Yahoo, which significantly impacted by a massive data breach that affected billions of users. The breach occurred in 2013, it was disclosed in 2016, exposed usernames, email addresses, password hashes. As a result of this, Verizon negotiated $360 million reduction from the original acquisition price, bringing it down from $4.83 billion to $4.48 billion. Additionally, they later agreed to share legal responsibilities of this breach, which further complicated the situation. So, why security is so important then? M&A deals are inherently complex and having many moving parts. A failure to assess and address the cybersecurity risk can lead to loss in valuation and might even break the deal. Many industries required to be compliant with GDPR, PCI DSS, DORA, NIS2. Non-compliance can result in fines and penalties. A data breach can severely damage the trust and the reputation of the acquiring company, which can turn a fun day into an ongoing nightmare. And ultimately, it is in the best interest for the purchasing company to deeply evaluate the cybersecurity posture and the past data breaches of the business they intend to buy. So M&A activities are particularly attractive for cyber criminals for several reasons. First, the deals are often highly publicized afterwards, thus making them easy targets. As soon as news of the deal goes public, it triggers a wave of spear phishing attacks, and cyber criminals exploit these to launch targeted attacks against both companies. Second, these deals involve significant amounts of money on the table that makes them a good target, and threat actors know that the target companies are often willing to pay to avoid disruptions. Additionally, stock market can be manipulated based on insider information, adding another kind of motivation for attackers. And according to FBI, all the significant financial events like these are more likely to attract ransomware attacks and other kind of cyber threats. Third, because these transactions represent a sensitive period of time of significant change and might potentially bring in chaos, it is a reason. According to Forescout and Refinitiv, more than 60% of IT and business decision makers agree that their companies are facing significant cyber risk when they are acquiring new companies. Moreover, more than 50% of the organizations have encountered cybersecurity issues or incidents during or immediately after an M&A deal. So who are these people? These can be often seek political or strategic advantages like state actors. They might aim to gain military R&D or commercial R&D edge. They can be financially motivated, driven by profit. They deploy ransomware, they sell the stolen data on the black market, manipulate the stock markets again. And insiders, which can be a particularly damaging form because they often have legitimate access to sensitive information, and they might act out of revenge or for other personal motives. And there are intersections of all above, like to gain strategic edge in the transaction, using the initial breaches to further facilitate attacks on the target company. So both buyers and sellers must be prepared for potential attacks to improve their resilience during these periods of time. So now let's take a look at some perspectives. Cybersecurity is not only a concern of buyer, but it is equally important for sellers and startups. Demonstrating that you have a good cyber hygiene can enhance your company's valuation. When your security measures are well documented, evidenceable, and effective, it reassures the potential buyer that their investment will be well protected. Unlike the financial records, cyber incidents can go public very quickly, especially with the new incident reporting regulations like SEC or DORA has. So showing that you have a robust security posture places you into a favorable light, and buyers are becoming increasingly savvy and astute about cybersecurity. They will scrutinize your security posture closely, so being well prepared with demonstrable security practices can prevent any weaknesses from undermining your deal. It is not just about avoiding deal breakers, but it's about showcasing that your company is ready and resilient. But ultimately, the responsibility of any cyber attack will fall on your company. So let me give some tips for the sellers. Do appoint a company a red team test against you. Engage with a professional firm to simulate an attack against your systems, because this will help identify vulnerabilities and demonstrate your commitment to security. Also, make sure that your company complies with the relevant security regulations and standards. Map your technical controls, validate their effectiveness. So by showing that your incident management processes are in place and they are responsive, this reassures the buyers that you can handle the potential incidents effectively. So cybersecurity is critical consideration for buyers. The stakes are high, and overlooking cybersecurity can lead to sad outcomes. When considering an acquisition, the question is not if a severe security issue will arise, but when. Similar to buying a house and discovering foundational problems that will be expensive to fix. This is essential here, true in the Netherlands. As an experienced buyer, you will put requirements into purchase contract to protect yourselves. Cybersecurity is no different. Sometimes the deal collapses without involving the cybersecurity part. However, security issues can significantly affect the valuation of a deal. For instance, I have experienced cases when the breach discovered during the negotiation drove down the value of the deal by millions of dollars. So the true impact of neglecting security oftentimes becomes evident after the deal is closed. Imagine an acquiring company only to realize 2 months later that all of its intellectual property is available on web that they bought. So another perspective is for private equity investors. Their primary focus is on maximizing the return on their investment. Let's break down these two key phases of the investment cycle. During the pre-deal phase, investors conduct extensive due diligence to make sure that they are making a sound investment. They are looking for undervalued assets, potential for growth and opportunities. They identify investments with high returns and manageable risks. So this includes the target company's cybersecurity posture to avoid any hidden liabilities that could affect the deal. Once the deal closed and the investment is made, the investors focus on maintaining and enhancing the value of their portfolio companies. Oftentimes this involves strategic changes, optimizing operations, and cybersecurity plays a role here because breaches and security failures can erode that value very rapidly. So cybersecurity measures in place help to protect the investment for potential threats that can disrupt operations and reduce their profitability. The final phase involves preparing the company for a sale to realize a maximum value, and they are aiming to exit their investment at a higher valuation when they are entered. So a strong security posture can improve the attractiveness of the company to potential buyers, reduce the due diligence friction, and support higher sales price, demonstrating that the company has been well managed, including cybersecurity practices. This graph illustrates how these different factors can impact the value of an investment over the time. At the start, the equity investment is made at the initial valuation of the company. This is the baseline value, which should grow over time. A historic cyber incident, if not identified or managed properly, can immediately push down the value of an investment, and this is a mechanical reduction in price due to the uncovered risks. Moving forward, a potential future incident, if a breach occurs after the acquisition, it can further reduce the company's value. Another significant factor is cost of non-compliance. If the company found to be non-compliant with regulations, the cost to fix these issues can be substantial, further pushing down the value. And implementing security measures and demonstrating compliance can help protect and even increase the value of this investment. Finally, when the potential exit value represents the future enterprise value, if everything was managed properly, this value can be significantly higher than the value when the investment was done, provided that the security risks are also evaluated and mitigated. So in summary, historic and future security incidents as well as the non-compliance costs can push the value down of the investment. Conversely, the proactive risk management and value protection measures can enhance the potential future value. Understanding the different risk profiles is important, especially from the private equity perspective, because they have a diverse portfolio of companies to manage. They deal with a wide range of industries like retail, manufacturing, hospitality, software, healthcare, fintech, etc. Each of these come with their own cybersecurity challenges. In today's world, almost everything is affected by cyber this way or that. Regulations are also rapidly catching up to address all these aspects, making it vital for the companies to stay compliant and secure. There are also certain sensitive sectors like agriculture, resources, defense contracts, satellite companies, large-scale consumer businesses. This requires security measures to protect against operational disruptions. So private equity firms must look at their portfolio to determine which of their companies are sick or healthy. They usually rely on benchmarks to identify these risks, and technological issues often feel distant from the traditional risk management perspective. And there are other factors that are affecting the risk profile, like the type of the deal, if it is a cross-border transaction that might also introduce additional complexities and regulatory requirements, the profile of the buyer, the seller, their specific characteristics, the position of the target in the supply chain, and the level of the regulatory oversight, if there is a nation-state interest, because it's adding another layer of risks. So industries that are more technology intensive are more likely to be affected by security issues, but you would think what even a gym can be affected by several cybersecurity issues as well. So in the M&A process, we are facing with challenges posed by the acquirer and the target teams, not the hackers actually, and we are racing against time and uncertainty. Let's go to understand the dynamics of the cybersecurity's and IT's general involvement in these transactions. The graph illustrates the ideal versus the reality of our involvement throughout the process. So this transaction often kept confidential and secret to prevent leaks and maintain that competitive advantage. And this secrecy is important, and to keep this circle of trust as small as possible for the longest time as possible. However, it often means that cybersecurity teams are not involved early enough to make a significant impact. Ideally, discussions about cybersecurity should start as soon as the deal begins. Early involvement allows us to understand the investment phases, the narrative, and maybe the culture of the target company. This early engagement makes it easier to integrate security considerations into the deal from the outset. Unfortunately, the reality is often different due to the confidentiality and the risk of the corporate espionage. IT and security teams might only code in a short time before the deal closes. For example, if you are being asked to complete a 6-week project in just 2 weeks, is not very practical. This late involvement can result in insufficient details on the target's security posture and potential risks. So the challenge of the insufficient early involvement leads to gaps in the understanding of the target's posture, and these confidentiality constraints, legal and regulatory obligations further complicate the issue for us. So my practical tips would be to engage early whenever possible, push early involvement in the M&A process. This will allow you for a more comprehensive assessment. Consider your involvement. Information officers have a head start ahead of security officers usually. Create your set of questions, develop them to quickly assess the target's cybersecurity readiness. And this will be covered today in our due diligence section also. Estimate your budget for information, consider the necessary teams and resources that you would possibly need. The necessity to innovate under pressure can lead to effective and efficient solutions tailored to crush down it to the deal's length and complexity, but it will be your problem, solve it. So let's keep talk about security involvement a little bit. If it is an IT problem or what? Unfortunately, it's often seen as merely as an IT or technological problem. However, M&A cybersecurity requires a specialized expertise, and many companies lack the necessary skills in-house, period. It's not just about IT, it's about understanding the broader strategic implications of cybersecurity risks. Some companies frequently engage in these activities and have developed mechanisms to handle these transactions. However, it is not so straightforward, especially with companies with diverse software ecosystems or in need with specialized competencies like PCI DSS for payment processing or hardware security for IoT devices and so on. But companies have to engage in massive IT change management in order to stay competitive. And while there is a push towards standardizing these due diligence processes, customization is often necessary to address all the unique aspects of a target and the deal. So cybersecurity due diligence should be approached with deal lens, not as a standard security assessment. That means understanding the strategic investment thesis and the risk acceptance criteria specific to the transaction is important. Also, to have a good estimate what this investment will introduce in terms of risks. And building a strong relationship with the board is crucial for security officers. The primary objective of any business in this world is to generate profit. Anything that hinders that goal, including security incidents, is not nice. Your role as a security team is to support business in achieving its goals by protecting its assets and ensuring operational continuity. You must understand that the key drivers of the business and the deal, and I cannot emphasize this enough, this includes knowing the strategic goals, the operational priorities of your company. And you need to clearly articulate how security risk impacts the deal. This involves translating the technical risk into business language, demonstrating the potential financial, operational, and reputational consequences of these incidents. And it will be essential to be flexible and open-minded. You must be willing to adapt to different approaches and consider different perspectives. This will help you to align with the business objectives. Then there is often a stigma on the security team that will add friction and slows down, even blocking the process. In order to overcome this, you must position yourself as an enabler rather than a blocker, to provide valuable insight and proactive solutions. Given that you typically have a small voice in the M&A process, developing strong soft skills is important. Persuasion, negotiation, effective communication will be essential for you to make yourself heard and make sure that security considerations are factored into the decision making. So regarding to effective communication, only bring up cybersecurity if it is relevant to the discussion. Forcing the conversation can lead to confusion and disengagement if they do not see its immediate relevance. And executives often do not understand the technical jargon. They have no idea what ISO or NIST is. Please translate these concepts into language that they can understand. Use analogies. This is important to explain concepts. For example, comparing cybersecurity measures to preventive healthcare can help non-experts to understand the importance of proactive measures versus emergency responses. Think like visiting a doctor. If a doctor uses a clinical language that you do not understand, it is hard to follow the doctor's advice. When you are discussing security, aim for clear and brief communication that leads to actionable outcomes, and avoid over-engineering your answers, providing excessive details on marginal issues. So always clearly outline the risk and what is your strategy to mitigate this. Explain how these impact the business in terms of financial loss, operational disruption, reputational damage. Miscommunication between technical and non-technical stakeholders can lead to misunderstanding and poor decision making then. So make sure that you educate your audience just enough to understand the basics of cybersecurity and its importance. Before we discuss the assessment of the security posture of a target, let's talk about the deal process itself. It involves lots of communication of sensitive data and personal information. Securing the deal process comes with its own challenges, and setting up secure environments for sharing data, such as secure data rooms, would be a good idea, and we will discuss this soon. Remember that your data is not confined between just the buyer and seller. Advisors, intermediaries, lawyers, accountants, IP specialists, and others are involved. Implementing role-based access control is important to make sure that only who need access to specific data can view it. It has to be managed. It actually seems pretty difficult to do so in these circumstances, and data governance is also slowing down the process, which is not good. Including code names and specific restrictions to protect sensitive information is key when discussing or mentioning such a project, general one. And there are a couple of challenges, or I would say anti-patterns, that I have seen in my practice when non-technical, non-prepared deal teams try to achieve these exchanges. Like spreadsheets and emails are generally not suitable for maintaining, updating data, given the operational velocity of both parties. I have seen a couple of nice examples of trivial fails, like when a secure data room software company, after the transaction, delivered a nice packaged gift box with a pen drive containing all the unencrypted archives. Imagine what can happen. When materials are printed, it's a big problem. They are usually left in trash bins, left behind on open desks. Don't print them, just shred them. That's it. So regarding to this secure deal room, which is a software, many times technology is already involved as virtual data room software. Almost all the data is stored and shared here. This is a special purpose software to handle file exchanges, forms, and etc. It's already better than using email exchanges or publicly share it via Google Drive. There are various technologies, including very software-based due diligence tools, and I have seen some that even have the possibility to include a security questionnaire as a module, but that's just a part of the process as we send information request lists as well, as we are going to see it later. So regarding to the DEEM rule software, the devil here is in the details, so let's review some key considerations. Regarding the jurisdiction, great care is required here. For example, when a company deals with a foreign entity, the seller might have obligations to keep data within a specific country based on where it operates, and the actual location of the data in the cloud is very hard to pin down. This is also required to consider. Sometimes the sellers obfuscate data such as staff name and client name, sometimes not. who have accessed the data at the service provider, at the buyer side, at the seller side, advisors. It's also important to know being able to track it down is important, especially if you have to investigate where the deal info was leaking. And with these very secure systems, if they have poor cryptographic key management, it can quickly deteriorate the security as well. I cannot stress it enough, multi-factor authentication is important, but it is hard to know if it is in place for everyone when you are dealing with multiple parties, because it is not on by default. Also, you have to have a preference for superior MFA methods, because there are weaknesses in short messages and email-based solutions. Imagine if your email doesn't have multi-factor authentication and an attacker can intercept the code and then they will have access to the data room, it's end of story. So one other main challenge here is the application security, particularly in cloud environments. Cloud environments often involve multiple layers of service providers, each with its own security posture. This complexity can introduce vulnerabilities. Since multiple clients share the same infrastructure, we hope that one tenant's data remains isolated and secure from the others. And beyond presenting security policies and reports by the service provider, it is challenging to determine their true security posture. Ask the service provider for a review of their penetration test reports. They can provide some insight into their security practices. So the questions are natural: how thorough is their security, if the assurances can be relied upon. It's okay. Conducting your own penetration test would be ideal for a clearer picture, but conducting it can slow down the process, which might not be feasible. If issues are found during a penetration test, then what? What's next? Will the entire process will be blocked? The security issues shall not derail the transaction. So here are some practicalities for positive outcomes. Choose a deal room technology that can serve your demands regarding to capability, resilience, if they have track record, authentication and access control options. And implement multi-factor authentication, role-based access control as you can. Monitor the access to the deal room to detect any unauthorized changes or suspicious activity, and recognize the fact that your deal room's footprint extends far beyond your organization. Lawyers, accountants, advisors, and other third parties involved in the process will increase your footprint and potentially your attack surface as well. So then the main question here is how can you precisely diagnose a patient when they are wrapped around an X? Cyber due diligence is a service to understand business threats and technology risk posed by the acquisition target, so it will enable informed decision making. There are gaps because you cannot know anything about the target candidate beyond what assets they are aware at a single point in time, what they are willing to share about their assets that they are aware of, and what they are sharing is not current or accurate or complete most of the times. Regarding to tooling, the target site systems is to support their operations, not your M&A due diligence, and these systems are probably already broken on both sides. Because having an inventory is not equal to asset management. So after looking into inventories of firewall servers, laptops, software audits, maybe cloud instances is not how a modern organization works. Not speaking about the attack surface assessment, including the suppliers that they are working with it. And as I mentioned, no process on either side is designed to address this complexity of the modern systems. And if there is no continuity between the due diligence and the integration phases, then you will have problems. IT security leaders are going to be held accountable for the systems without having the responsibility or authority to make suggestions ahead of time. And IT team members on both sides are concerned with their job stabilities. So, but there are many things that you can do in this time pressurized situation where the availability and the reliability of information is questionable. Do not forget that at the end of the process, these will be the base for your insights and advices. So have your questions prepared as a part of an information request list, but do not expect much of it. Unfortunately, if you will receive no to all of your questions, it will be pretty difficult to evaluate the security posture, so you need to have other methods in the mix. It is an interesting development that now many are using AI to ask questions, answer the questions in this list, and even evaluate responses. So the story is really getting messy here, so I would like to stick anything that is evidenceable and real. And do not forget that what is written, what people say, what the technical realities are all different things. Also, different things are valuable for the acquirer, the board, the CEO, the competitors, and the hackers. But if you are lucky, you might have some observable security policies, for which I dedicated a few next slides. Another great way to gather information is having interviews with key people. You have quite a degree of freedom here to ask questions, understand their philosophy on privacy, so you can quickly pin down several areas that need attention. And it is also a great start to develop relationships with the target if the deal is going to proceed. You can immediately get a better understanding of their wanted security objectives and constraints. So you should talk to people about what they think about their product, but there is a dark side of it, because many prepared to have staged interviews, which is a general phenomena in compliance, like for assessments on PCI DSS and others. And as we sit back to our computer screens, we often have a sort of tooling now, including open source intelligence, which is largely underutilized and have a great potential, also technical assessments such as penetration testing and other specialties that can give you a little bit more material information. So why I do not accept vulnerability scans in the due diligence is because technical assessment, let's grossly call it a penetration test, provides a look into the realities of the target. So whenever it is possible, conduct your own penetration test, and unlike a vulnerability scan, a technical assessment shall be comprehensive and tailored. It shall consider the context of the target to provide a more accurate picture. Ask and request and review the previous penetration test reports if they can provide it for you. Were they conducted by an external firm, an internal team, or via bug bounties? But a word on the reliability of these reports is please check if these were thorough and the scope was adequate, because not all the penetration tests are equally reliable. There are pen tests and there are pen tests, if you understand what I mean. The results will depend on the skills of the testing team and the amount of time dedicated. The more experienced the team and the longer the periods will yield better results. And what to test? I insist to test production environments. I always did. If it cannot take the stress of it, then it is not worth it to buy. As we speak, at least 50,000 hackers are trying to hack the same production system. Well, the staging environments often leak information or has information of production data or share credentials with that environment that can lead to security breaches in reality. But the avoidance of testing production systems to avoid unnecessary discussions is not a reliable practice, so let's address this directly. And since the initial due diligence tests often have very tight time constraints which limit the depth of the assessment, what I can say is that the following penetration test will reveal even more issues. And the goal of the test is also to see how well the target can detect potential security incident, what is their ability to respond and manage these efficiently. Keep this in mind. If a remote code execution vulnerability is found on the first day of the assessment, it is a good idea to assess whether the target could have detected and responded earlier. What kind of forensic report they can show up to demonstrate their abilities to do investigations. I mean, if we could find it on the first day, it was probably exploited earlier on. So we are on a track to have a thing that can affect the valuation, and here things get really interesting. Also, scaling is often overlooked by saying, yes, our systems are totally scalable, same goes for disaster recovery and backups, but we recently had a case when they couldn't scale and it greatly affected the business goals. Denial of service testing is typically not done in the initial phases. It can be important, but an overlooked aspect of the tech due diligence. I mean, it took $15 for us to take down a system, end of story. Social engineering and phishing tests are effective during the integration phases when you're combining them with awareness sessions, but these are rarely done during the due diligence phase. Finally, validate that they are able to prioritize vulnerabilities, or if they need help with that. These questions, how they are approaching these, will help you to proceed with integration. It is also critical to understand the difference between being compliant and secure, and why the compliance doesn't always mean security, and what buyers need to be aware of. So achieving ISO 27001 means that the company has implemented information security management, but it doesn't guarantee that the system is immune to breaches. Same goes for PCI DSS standards, where the company meets specific technical requirements for payment card data. However, it can still be breached, and sometimes the scope of compliance is very, very narrow. For bug bounty programs, to encourage ethical hackers to find and report vulnerabilities can be valuable, low cost, but they do not cover all aspects of the security. So compliance doesn't mean that the company is secure. This indicates that certain controls are in place, but it doesn't cover everything. So you have to understand the scope of the compliance, because sometimes it is purposefully narrow to meet specific requirements and leaving other areas vulnerable. And if something was based on self-assessment, it can lead gaps in security that is not immediately apparent. So these are types of security policies I came across. Basically, their aim is to comply with something as a trigger. In a very few cases, I have seen it being done for the own good of the target company. But when the management recognizes that they have something valuable to protect, I love to work with those people. So these policies shall give you an idea how they are managing data, who are the data custodians, how the data protection is implemented, where is the data, okay, relational databases, but it gets spread out to and indexed in Elasticsearch databases, developer logs. It's also extremely complicated in cloud environments with mobile workers, where the export of a data ends up hopefully not at the black market. So digital footprint analysis of the target is one of the most valuable tools next to technical assessments. It's about gathering information from the internet in a structured way, and there are many practical ways and useful outputs that can be achieved that might impact the deal. Analyze all the entities, the third parties, the executives, the staff, whatever you can find. Look into their feelings, literally anything that is available. Once a target mistakenly sent a document that contained an entity where we found that the universal beneficial owner was serving his jail sentence. Deal broken. At another time, we found that an ex-CTO was employed by competitors, and he probably took all his know-how while the CEO of the company tried to save his money with the deal. Sometimes we are notifying the target that their systems credentials are actually up on the black market. At other times, we are asking the management to change their passwords at the target, because apparently their passwords were leaked 4 times in the last 4 years. So there is a great potential in it. A legal company might be able to do some Googling. A savvy tech guy, an individual, can also. But when you're doing this on a large scale as a teamwork, it requires very specialized knowledge how to manage all this intelligence. In the intersection of tech and security due diligence, many questions may come to your mind, including code quality, if they have software in place to scan this or that. But many times questions are even simpler if they have production credentials, are hardwired in the code. Not even PCI DSS is mandating this actually. And the build, development and staging environments for software companies often hiding lots of nice surprises. If someone can modify code in a production system without leaving a notice and bypassing all the approvals, it will be a problem financially also. Hardware, automotive, radios and other specialties, your IT team will not be able to assess them properly. Once I said that for this amount that the assessor was asking for, I would do in a single weekend, I could earn my annual salary in 2 days. So with IoT, you need a lot of substantial experience. I have lots of nice stories, especially when testing adult sex toys, but I will leave it for another session. When a company you buy often comes with its own site and its physical location, you have to align their security to yours. That might include video surveillance, badging systems and others. And their culture within multiple countries can even deviate. One place I have a nice rack cabinet ordered nicely. At the other place, the switches are falling on my head when I'm opening the ceiling where they are installed. So an inspection can quickly reveal some issues to be corrected, like alert codes, passwords are written on a table in the office on post-its. So at least we won't have problem taking over those accounts, right? In a particular case I was investigating earlier, we had a company buyout and the ex-owner and his staff started to use the target's warehouse to serve their own business for fun. So after your fruitful work, you might discover that something is wrong. What do? You may set aside some money. Many executives adopted the choices no deal or calling a friend for an advice, and this last one is a surprisingly popular choice that tells that's it about the information security process. So only a few would say deal and lower the valuation and hope that the company will come up from its ashes. The decision for deal or no deal is largely depending on if the acquirer feels that they can tackle with the problem. Don't worry, it will be your problem. How does security impact the revenue, if they are going to lose customers or IP, and these are big questions where your communication skills have to be in place. If a hacker says that they stole data, would you pay up? What are the warranties? Remember the Uber's case. As a seller, would you still notify the buyer even if the breach didn't went public? While the new SEC regulation, there are disclosure windows now. And in a case of a breach, a competitor can be suspicious also. Insiders also. The acquirer company itself. So it is tricky who can be attributed to it. Imagine what all of these things mean for an information security officer to communicate in these situations. Summarizing all these, I recommend to come up with multiple deliverables that are condensating all of these findings from your product. First, a score that is quantitative can range from 1 to 5, signifying a range between a complete deal breaker to a situation where a security posture is better than yours, and do not touch it because you can learn from them. The summary of the project in a few lines is very useful, including disclaimers what you was not looking at, the overall view of the investment from a security perspective according to the thesis you could learn. And then you can detail several aspects of your findings and express them as critical risk dimensions in the next slide. And these are common to measure a security posture of a company. You can include your findings of a fact of a breach that has been discovered, because basically that's why we are here. Also include your insights in 1 or 2 sentences, even if there are a dozen, just in bullet points. And most importantly, by now you shall have gathered enough information of the project to create a prioritized list of action plan that shall be done with the company from the cybersecurity perspective in the next few months. So here are a couple of dimensions from how the risk perception is generally going on, how reactive they are into incident management, what things they have in place, how they are communicating to their employees, how aware they are for their supply chain, and so on. So when we are proceeding, then somehow we want to have a control over them in the holding period, and the question is that what are the appropriate technologies and controls to put around them. Transitioning is often overlooked. Google spreadsheets with hundreds of passwords, we have seen it, but the due diligence continues because you have to gain a better understanding of the company itself, and there might be still restrictions to complete your due diligence to address the blind spots, because like you can still not interview with system administrators, for example. And there are several issues that can be discussed before signing the deal, depending on the nature of the transaction, depending on the culture, the affinities, the willingnesses. But I guarantee that there will be some examples of resistance as well. So we are going to come back to this roadmap quickly. What I can recommend for the challenges is to identify the key contact people of the new security team, because they will be your partners, establish the reporting lines and responsibilities for the new entity, create this roadmap, and identify the potential roadblocks that you need to address. And then you can keep talking about evaluating the risk management practices and how to harmonize your systems. With other challenges, you have to manage change, raise awareness of people, communication. You have to consider that retention of key knowledge is important. This will be the time when the insider threat, the ransomware threat, and other things that I was discussing earlier will materialize. So also it is important to implement some sort of mechanism to escalate disputes over integration choices, establish these levels of alignment, and provide a common communication platform to be participated on. So regarding to the roadmap and priorities and iterations, the roadmap will probably is going to change a lot. Initial action plan that may contain several things that require immediate actions, but the target and acquirer might not have the adequate resources and budgets. So priorities in terms of intermediate 30, 60, 90-day help, definitely, but then it will meet with the realities. Imagine that if you are acquiring a startup, a small number of people will meet with lots of new friends from legal, tech, IT sec, product, and so on, and the demands will saturate them, and business as usual shall be carried on. So questions like into which monitoring system we are integrating them, if they need to be let into your own systems to manage this or that, if the deal scope is changing, you are not buying just a domain but the infrastructure, the code, the contractor base as well, you will have to face changes. So this roadmap shall be really dynamic, but you shall have one. Also important consideration is to establish relationships early on, because this is how security gets a mandate, understand and communicate high-level security objectives and goals, how this whole integration process and the following steps of the due diligence will look like. Make sure that you create some sort of information structure, how to fix all the information you have learned. Make sure that you have some expectation of progress, even if you can only allocate 1 or 2 hours plus email exchanges per month at the early stages, and make sure that you are able to produce regular reporting. So let's do something that has immediate results in terms of risk mitigation, vulnerability remediation, developing relationships, collecting information on blind spots. With all of these small companies, as I mentioned, with the very low intensity start, it can take a year until you get a meaningful progress. So there are easy ones like pen testing. It happened not so long ago, but it doesn't work to redo immediately. Repeating after a time is sufficient, but it is guaranteed that you will have even more results. They could provide a penetration test report for you before, but the one that you are delivering them might not be the one that they want to show off. And if your pen testing time have some free time, ask them to test some high-risk third parties where they have right to audit, and everyone will be happy. Sometimes they really need help with prioritizing the vulnerabilities, and continuous checks are necessary to be remediated. Also, a practical thing is security awareness. Start these sessions. It's a good way to let them know you at the target organization. These can be tailored initially and tailored even more as you get know them and they get know you. So then establishing a phishing practice, the reporting lines is important, and then you can also use further techniques, continuing education with microlearning, role-based education, and in the context of an application security program, developer education. So this will be your anchor of connections and for cultural transformation as well. There are other things that are also practical, like social media account hardening. Sometimes it is surprisingly hard to collect for the whole portfolio. Make sure that two-factor authentication is enabled, the accounts are recoverable. It would be a pity if these would be hacked or would you lose control over them. Customer data comes with email marketing. These are being exported, leftover, sent to systems that are not reviewed, and these are changing as well. Who has access to what? Same goes for BI reports, where people have access to totally unnecessary data, and then it can also materialize the insider threat when you are finding that someone is selling 20,000 of your high spending customers list on the black market. For software companies, delivery pipelines is an important one. You can audit that and harden that with many methodologies. It is a point Just think about assumed risk scenarios, passwords shared between environments, or the good old practice of having the same production data on staging systems, not having proper authentication on build systems, and these could all lead to very severe consequences once they are materialized, so I would prioritize these. For access reviews, if you already know the core systems, you might have a list of the third-party applications. Reviewing the list of the identities is important, just like asking for justifications even for third parties, especially if the situation changes like this. You do not want to see someone who has been terminated 8 years ago, or why it is a problem that all the developers have access to the payment service provider. Cloud security is difficult. It is difficult to acquire cloud security competencies. DevOps culture is often not very well understood. You can set up monitoring there. Bring your own devices common. Non-managed endpoints are dangerous but convenient things. You can expect some resistance there when you are enrolling new endpoints, but some visibility protection is necessary, also security baselines. Application security is often there, but nominally it requires great care to have that moving on. It is a series of conversations to determine their needs, but developers' time is also expensive to take from production. For HR, if someone departs and no one gets notified about it, the account is not being removed, if there are privilege creeps, if people with fake ID are trying to get hired, etc., etc. So the rest is also very important. And then finally, there are a few possible pathways when this journey ends, if not with dissolution or divestiture or sale of the company, an IPO, exit possibly. So security has done everything to protect the value and the reputation of the company and possibly enhanced it. So now you are on the other side of the table, ready to demonstrate the company's security preparedness by facing the buy-side cybersecurity due diligence. And of course, since you know the process itself is now secure, this part can be also challenging because the integration of an entity from your infrastructure and ecosystem is a different story. And possibly some things will hit back, but that was our discussion, and I wonder if you have any questions on Menti, and I'm then up to answer it. So thank you very much. This was the presentations test, and I have 4 viewers. Fantastic. Why you are here? It will be at 3 p.m. in 2 hours from now. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day and join us again at 3 p.m.